Cale stared through the frosted window of the outpost, his breath fogging the glass. The moon outside was vast, silent, and white. Snow and ice stretched as far as he could see, broken only by the faint outlines of distant ridges. The colony was quiet tonight, as it had been for weeks. Cale had grown used to the silence, but sometimes it pressed down on him, heavy and suffocating, like an invisible hand wrapping around his chest. He rubbed his eyes and turned away from the window. The hum of the life support system was the only sound, a soft, steady reminder that something in this lonely place was still alive. It was supposed to be comforting, but tonight it felt hollow. Cale had been working here for 6 months. 6 months of solitude, of repairing broken machines, checking readings, and talking to himself to fill the empty hours. He liked the work. It was precise. Predictable, but sometimes he wondered why humans even tried to colonize moons like this one. The emptiness seemed endless. A sudden beep from the communications console made him jump. The display showed a signal, faint and scrambled, but definitely human. Cale frowned. Who could be trying to contact me now? He muttered. He tapped the screen, trying to stabilize the signal. Static filled the speakers. Then a voice came through, soft but firm. No one should be alone tonight. Cale froze. The voice was calm, almost gentle, but there was something in it that made the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. Who is this? Cale asked, his voice shaking slightly. There was a pause. Then the voice answered, almost like it had been expecting him to ask. Someone who can help. I'm coming. Cale blinked. He stared at the blinking lights on the console. Coming here. He swallowed hard. Here, on this frozen rock? Yes, the voice replied. I'll land soon. Cale didn't know what to say. His mind raced. Who could be coming all the way to this lonely outpost in the middle of nowhere? He had never met anyone from outside the colony. Supplies rarely arrived, and visitors were almost unheard of. The idea that someone would choose to come here voluntarily seemed impossible. And yet, the voice felt sincere, calm, certain. He wiped his hands on his uniform and paced the small room. The walls of the outpost were bare metal, illuminated by dim lights that flickered occasionally. He ran a hand over the control panel, checking the sensors for any sign of a landing ship. Outside, the wind howled over the ice plains, whipping up small flurries that struck the outer windows like tiny knives. Minutes passed. Or maybe hours' time was hard to measure in isolation. Then, through the frosted glass of the docking bay, Cale saw movement. A shadow. A figure in a suit appeared, moving quickly and with purpose. Cale's heart pounded. He rushed to the door, pulling it open just as the docking hatch hissed and released. The figure stepped inside. She was not what Cale expected. The suit she wore was sleek and practical, but her presence seemed to warm the room instantly. Her helmet retracted, and Cale saw her face calm, sharp, and kind, with eyes that seemed to see everything at once. I'm Leora, she said simply, her voice the same soft tone he had heard over the comms. I thought no one should be alone tonight. Cale blinked, unsure how to respond. His mouth opened, then closed. So, you're staying, right? Leora smiled faintly, as if she understood exactly what he meant, but she didn't answer immediately. Instead, she set down her equipment, moving with a grace that seemed unusual for someone carrying heavy tools. The outpost felt smaller somehow, not because it had changed, but because her presence filled it with a sense of life it had lacked for months. Cale realized he hadn't spoken to anyone in days or maybe weeks. Just to hear a real human voice, calm and steady, was enough to make him dizzy. I might stay, Leora said after a moment. Depending on what we find here, Cale nodded, though he wasn't sure if she had meant it for him or for herself. Right, he said, his voice rough. Well, welcome, I guess. She tilted her head slightly, watching him fumble, and a small laugh escaped her lips. It was brief, but it made Cale feel like the cold moon outside didn't matter quite as much anymore. They began to work together immediately. Leora carried tools and began inspecting the life support systems, checking the sensors, and running diagnostics. Cale watched her closely. She moved with purpose and precision. Yet she also seemed to notice details he had long since stopped seeing: the small scratches in the metal walls, the tiny cracks in the glass, the faint hum of a motor that didn't sound quite right. "I like this place," she said suddenly, standing back to look around. "It's quiet. You can hear things other people miss." Cale raised an eyebrow. "You call this quiet?" "It's lonely and cold. And—" He stopped himself. Talking about loneliness felt strange with her here, but somehow he needed to. "It gets inside your head." Leora nodded. "But sometimes that's when you see what humans are capable of. Alone or not, you find ways to survive, ways to make this place yours." Her words struck Cale. He realized that for all the months he had spent alone, he had survived. He had kept the systems running. He had adapted. And maybe, just maybe, having someone here could make him more than just a survivor. Maybe he could start to feel like he belonged. Outside, the wind shrieked across the icy plains. Inside, Cale and Leora worked quietly together, side by side. The hum of the machinery and the soft clatter of tools became a rhythm they shared. After a while, Cale found himself opening up. He told her about the storms that had raged for days, the strange noises that sometimes echoed through the outpost, the small victories that felt enormous when no one else was around to see them. Leora listened, never interrupting, occasionally nodding or making a small, understanding noise. By the time they had finished the first round of checks, Cale realized he felt something he hadn't felt in months. Calm. Not completely safe, not completely happy, but connected. "I should probably show you the rest of the outpost," Cale said, motioning toward the narrow corridor leading to the sleeping quarters and the observation deck. "It's not much, but it's home for now." Leora followed, her footsteps light but confident. "Home," she repeated softly, as if testing the word. "Yes, I can see that." They walked together through the small corridors, past walls lined with panels, blinking lights, and the occasional personal item Cale had left behind: a photo taped to the wall, a small plant in a glass container, a mug with a chip on the edge. The details seemed more alive with her here, as if she had brought a new perspective to the familiar. Finally, they reached the observation deck. Cale pulled back the curtain from the window. Outside, the moon stretched endlessly, cold and silent. But inside, with Leora standing beside him, it no longer seemed quite so empty. "Do you ever wonder why humans go to places like this?" Cale asked. "Why we try to live in the middle of nowhere?" Leora looked out at the snow and ice, thoughtful. "I think it's because humans are curious," she said, "and because we're resilient. Even when it seems impossible, even when it's cold and lonely, we find a way." Cale nodded slowly. He felt a small spark of hope, tiny but real, in the pit of his chest. Maybe she was right. Maybe humans could survive anything. And maybe, with someone beside you, survival could feel like something more. Leora turned to him, her eyes meeting his. "You're not alone tonight," she said. And this time there was no radio static, no mystery, just truth. Cale smiled, finally allowing himself to feel it. The strange, warm relief of companionship. "Good," he said, because I was starting to think I never would be. And for the first time in months, the outpost didn't feel quite so lonely. The next morning, Cale woke to the soft hum of the outpost's systems and the gentle flicker of sunlight reflecting off the icy plains. It felt strange to have someone else in the station. Leora was already up, checking the sensors in the main control room. She moved with calm precision, her hands steady as she tapped on screens, adjusted switches, and monitored the readings. Cale watched her from the doorway. There was something about her presence that made the room feel warmer, more alive. He had spent months alone here, and now with Leora, moving around the outpost. Even the simple act of someone walking past him seemed comforting. "You're up early," Cale said. Rubbing the sleep from his eyes, Leora glanced at him, a small smile playing at the corners of her lips. "Sleep comes easier when you're not alone," she replied. "And the outpost needs attention. I thought I would help." Cale nodded, unsure whether to feel embarrassed or relieved. It was strange to have someone care about this frozen rock at the edge of the galaxy, especially when no one else had bothered to check in for weeks. "All right," Kale said, finally. "Let's start with the life support systems. I think you already saw some of it last night, but there are a few quirks we need to fix." Together, they worked in tandem. Kale explained the minor issues, the power fluctuations, the slow response of the heating units, the occasional sensor glitches, and Leora listened carefully, asking questions and suggesting adjustments. Her knowledge was precise, practical, sometimes surprising. "You missed a small calibration error on the secondary oxygen generator," she said, pointing to a tiny display screen. "If left unchecked, it could reduce efficiency over time." Kale raised an eyebrow. "You noticed that already?" She nodded. "Humans are good at noticing patterns. Even small ones can matter." Her words reminded Kale of why he had come to work on this moon in the first place. Humans were curious, persistent, and clever. Even in isolation, he could find ways to solve problems. And now, with someone else here, the possibilities seemed to expand. After hours of work, they took a break in the small mess hall. Kale poured 2 cups of synthesized coffee and handed one to Leora. She took it with a small nod of thanks, sipping carefully. "So," Kale began, hesitant, "you're not just here for companionship, right? You said you were part of a research team." "Yes," Leora replied. "I'm here to monitor a nearby Cetacean alien ruins that humans have been tracking for some time. We detected unusual energy readings, and I was sent to investigate." Kale leaned back in his chair. "Alien ruins?" His voice was a mixture of awe and disbelief. "On this moon?" Leora nodded. "Yes. Not far from here, but the terrain is dangerous, and the storms can be unpredictable. That's why I stayed here tonight. To ensure someone wouldn't be alone if the storm hit." Kale swallowed. He had thought the worst part of being alone was the silence, but now he realized it could have been much worse. A sudden storm in this harsh environment could mean death. Leora had risked a long journey to keep someone safe, and for the first time, Kale felt a deep sense of gratitude. "I see," he said finally. "So, you're staying for the storm. Make sense?" Leora smiled faintly. "Perhaps longer. Depends on what we find." The conversation turned to practical matters. They planned their day. Kale would continue routine maintenance while Leora checked the sensors for unusual energy patterns around the ruins. Despite their different tasks, they moved with an unspoken rhythm, each aware of the other's presence. It was strange, Kale thought, how quickly one could adjust a company when it had been absent for so long. Later, as they suited up to inspect the outpost's external equipment, the storm outside began to pick up. Snow whipped around the outpost in blinding sheets, and the wind howled like a living creature. Kale felt a shiver run down his spine, not just from the cold, but from the realization that the universe outside was vast and unforgiving. "Stay close," he said to Leora. Adjusting his helmet, "I plan to," she replied, her tone calm but firm. They stepped outside, the wind striking them immediately, biting through their suits. The outpost's solar panels and external sensors were half buried in snow, and Kale worked quickly to clear them while Leora monitored the readings. The storm made it difficult to hear each other, but they managed to communicate with hand signals and short shouts. Despite the danger, Kale found himself laughing at one point when Leora's helmet fogged up, and she struggled to wipe it clean. She joined in the laughter, and for a brief moment, the storm seemed less threatening, almost playful. Back inside, dripping wet but safe, they dried off and reviewed the data they had collected. Leora's scans showed something unusual, a faint, repeating energy signal coming from deep within the ruins. Kale frowned. "What do you think it is?" Leora shook her head. "I don't know yet, but it's not random. There's some intelligence behind it, possibly alien." The revelation sent a thrill through Kale. He had always believed humans were capable of remarkable things, but this was beyond anything he had imagined. The ruins, the energy signals, the thought that humans might be standing on the edge of something incredibly it filled him with excitement. As night fell again, the storm raged outside, but inside the outpost, There was a quiet warmth. They shared a simple meal, discussing the day's work and what they might discover at the ruins. Cale found himself opening up more than he had with anyone in months. He spoke of his childhood, why he had chosen engineering, and how he had dreamed of exploring distant worlds. Leora listened, offering small insights and occasionally asking questions that made him think. "I like that you dream big," she said at one point. "Even here, in the middle of nowhere, you keep imagining what's possible." Cale smiled, a little embarrassed. "I guess humans can't help it. We keep going, even when it seems impossible," Leora nodded. "Exactly. That's what makes us human." Hours passed, and Cale realized he was no longer thinking about the loneliness that had haunted him for months. Instead, he felt a strange mix of excitement and comfort. There was danger in the storms, uncertainty in the ruins, but he also felt a sense of connection, something he hadn't realized he had been missing, as they prepared to rest for the night. Cale looked over at Leora. "So, you're really staying then?" he asked a little nervously. She met his gaze and smiled softly. "For now," she said, "we have work to do. And someone should always be here, watching the stars." Cale nodded, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with the heater. "I'm glad you're here," he said quietly. "Me too," Leora replied. Settling into her sleeping area, Cale lay down in his own bunk, staring at the ceiling. The outpost hummed with life, not just the machines, but the presence of another human. For the first time in months, the vast silence of the moon didn't feel oppressive. It felt full of potential, of possibilities, and of the quiet promise that humanity could endure in the coldest, loneliest places, outside. The storm continued to rage, but inside the outpost, Cale felt something stronger than fear. He felt hope, and with hope came determination. Determination to explore, to survive, and to see what lay beyond the frozen plains. With Leora beside him, the night passed slowly but peacefully. Cale woke several times to hear the wind thrashing against the walls, but he no longer felt the panic that had gripped him in the past. Instead, he felt a quiet confidence, knowing he was not alone. Morning came again, and with it a new sense of purpose. Together, Cale and Leora would face whatever challenges awaited at the ruins. Together, they would discover the secrets hidden beneath the ice, and together, they would prove what humans were capable of. Even in the most isolated corners of the galaxy, and as Cale watched Leora begin her morning scans, he realized that companionship, even unexpected, could change everything. No one should be alone tonight. The next day, the storm had passed. The frozen plains outside the outpost sparkled under a weak sun, but the wind still carried a bite that made every exposed inch of skin sting. Cale and Leora prepared for their first real journey beyond the safety of the outpost. Their destination was the ruins, a few kilometers away. Partially buried beneath ice and snow, Cale strapped on his gear, checking oxygen levels and temperature readings. His heart thumped with excitement and nervousness. Months of isolation had taught him caution, but this was different. The ruins were old, mysterious, and possibly dangerous. And yet he felt a spark of hope he hadn't felt in a long time. "Ready?" Leora asked, standing beside him with her pack secured. Her calm demeanor contrasted with Cale's restless energy, and he found it oddly reassuring. "As I'll ever be," he said. They stepped outside, the snow crunching under their boots. The outpost quickly disappeared behind them, a small metal against the vast white plains. The wind whispered across the ice, carrying distant echoes of shifting snow. For a moment, Cale felt the familiar weight of isolation pressing in. But then, he glanced at Leora. Her presence was steady, grounding him, and he took a deep breath, letting determination replace fear. The ruins emerged gradually. Broken shards of stone and metal jutting out from the ice. Strange symbols and carvings hinted at a civilization long gone, something ancient and alien. Cale's eyes widened. He had never seen anything like it. "Look at this," Leora said, kneeling near a triangular piece of metal embedded in the ice. The markings. They're deliberate. Someone, or something, was here before us. Kale crouched beside her, tracing a finger over the symbols. They were unlike any human writing he had seen. Geometric patterns intertwined with curves and angles that seemed to shift under his gaze. "It's beautiful," he whispered. Leora nodded. "And possibly dangerous. We don't know what we're dealing with." As they explored, Kale's scanner beeped suddenly. He frowned at the screen. "I'm picking up signal. Strange energy readings." Leora glanced at the monitor. Not random. Definitely intentional. The signal pulsed in irregular intervals, a rhythm that almost felt like it was trying to communicate. Kale's mind raced. Could it be a warning? Or was it an invitation, like Leora had suggested the night she arrived? "Should we follow it?" Kale asked. Leora hesitated. Carefully. "We don't know what's generating this signal, but it's connected to the ruins, and we need to understand it." They moved toward the source, stepping over jagged rocks and broken structures. The ruins were silent, except for the soft hum of Kale's scanner and the crunch of snow underfoot. As they approached a central chamber, the energy readings spiked. The air seemed to vibrate, and a faint glow emerged from beneath the ice. Kale's heart pounded. This is incredible." Leora nodded, her eyes fixed on the glowing source. "It's more than incredible. This could be knowledge, technology, or both." They carefully chipped away the ice, revealing a circular platform covered in alien symbols. In the center, a crystal-like structure pulsed with light, sending waves of energy through the ground. The pattern of pulses matched the signal Kale had detected. "It's alive," Kale whispered, not fully understanding what he meant. Leora shook her head slightly. "Not alive like us, but it's intelligent. It's sending a message." Kale knelt beside the platform, scanning it with his portable device. Data streamed across the screen, incomprehensible at first, but slowly forming recognizable patterns. "It's communicating," he said. "We just need to decode it." Leora crouched next to him. "Let's see what we can understand." Hours passed as they worked, cross-referencing symbols and scanning for energy fluctuations. The ruins seemed to hum around them, almost as if the structure was aware of their presence. Kale felt a thrill and a tinge of fear. They were alone in a remote, frozen world, deciphering a message from an ancient intelligence. Suddenly, the ground shook slightly. Small rocks tumbled from the ceiling of the chamber. Kale grabbed Leora's arm. "Did you feel that?" She nodded, her eyes scanning the walls. "The energy. It's reacting to us. Maybe it knows we're here." The realization sent a chill down Kale's spine. Not only were they dealing with ancient technology, but it was aware of them watching, responding, testing them. "Should we leave?" Kale asked, his voice tight. "Not yet," Leora said firmly. "We're close." The signal. It's almost complete. As they focused on decoding the final part of the message, the chamber began to glow brighter. Symbols on the walls shifted slightly, as if rearranging themselves. Kale's hand shook slightly with a mix of excitement and anxiety. This is beyond anything humans have encountered. Leora placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "We can handle it. We just need to think logically. Humans are capable of incredible things, especially when we work together." Kale nodded, taking comfort in her confidence. Together, they adjusted their devices and carefully traced the symbols, matching the pulses of the crystal. Slowly, the patterns formed a clear sequence of map, not of stars or planets, but of the ruins themselves. It pointed to deeper chambers, hidden beneath layers of ice. This is amazing," Kale said, barely able to contain his excitement. "It's a map. There's more down here." Leora studied the sequence, her brow furrowed. "And there's more than that. The energy readings suggest the structures are functional. We might be looking at a repository of knowledge, or even technology, preserved by the original builders." Kale's mind raced. The possibilities were endless. Humanity had always looked to the stars with curiosity and determination. But this was proof that humans could not only survive in isolation, but also explore, discover, and understand things far beyond their previous reach. As they prepared to venture deeper into the hidden chambers, the crystal, pulsed one last time. A beam of light shot upward, piercing the ceiling and casting the chamber in an ethereal glow. The signal had reached its peak, and for a moment, Cale felt as though the ruins were welcoming them, acknowledging their presence. "Do you feel that?" he asked, his voice low. "Yes," Leora replied. "It's like it's inviting us in." Cale swallowed. "Or testing us." "Maybe both," Leora said with a small smile. "Humans are resilient. We adapt. We survive. That might be what it's looking for." With careful steps, they descended into the deeper chambers, the glow from the crystal illuminating the way. Strange carvings lined the walls, scenes of creatures, machines, and humans who looked different yet familiar. Cale realized that the ruins were not just a building, they were a story. A record of intelligence and ingenuity that had existed long before humans had reached this moon. The signal continued to pulse softly, guiding them deeper. Cale's excitement grew with every step, but so did his awareness of the unknown. This was uncharted territory, and one wrong move could be disastrous. Yet, as he glanced at Leora, he felt a sense of unity and strength. Together, they could face whatever lay ahead. Finally, they reached a large chamber, its ceiling lost in darkness. In the center was another crystal, larger and more complex than the first. The energy readings were off the charts. Cale's scanner beeped rapidly, struggling to keep up with the data. Leora approached it cautiously. "This is it," she whispered. "This is the heart of the ruins." Cale nodded, awestruck. "And it's alive, in its own way." The chamber seemed to respond to their presence, the crystal's light shifting and pulsing in patterns that matched their movements. It was as if the ruins were communicating, testing their understanding, gauging their humanity. Leora turned to Cale. This is what humans are meant to discover. Our curiosity, our courage, our determination, it's what will allow us to unlock the knowledge here." Cale swallowed, feeling the weight of the moment. He had spent months alone, surviving, maintaining, and dreaming. Now, in the depths of ancient alien ruins, he realized that humanity's greatest strength was not just survival, but the ability to explore, to learn, and to grow, even in the face of the unknown. And with Leora by his side, he knew they could do it together. The signal pulsed again, brighter this time, as if acknowledging their resolve. Cale took a deep breath. They were standing on the threshold of discovery, and nothing, not even the cold, lonely moon, could stop them now. The glow from the huge crystal in the deepest chamber faded slowly, leaving Cale and Leora standing in a dim, quiet room. Their hearts were still racing from the discovery, but the silence that followed felt heavy, almost expectant. It was as if the ruins were waiting to see what they would do next. Cale exhaled shakily. "We need to take this data back to the outpost," he said. "If this structure reacts to us, we need to understand it before we go any further." Leora nodded. "I agree." And the weather forecast wasn't stable. A storm might be forming again. The two of them climbed back through the tunnels, carefully retracing their steps. The ruins hummed faintly, glowing with soft pulses, as if watching them leave. Cale lingered once, turning toward the deep chamber with a strange feeling. Not fear, something like respect. These ruins had survived for ages, and now they were communicating with humans. It felt important, but outside, a new danger waited. As Cale climbed out of the entrance and looked across the plains, his breath caught. The sky had darkened. Thick clouds swirled above them, heavy and fast-moving. Snow blew across the ground, forming waves like white sand dunes. The temperature had dropped sharply. "This storm came too fast," Cale said. Leora stepped beside him, her visor tinted against the bright glare. "Then we need to move. Now." They started their trek back to the outpost, leaning against the wind. But with every step, the storm grew worse. The snow stung their suits and the wind howled, pulling at their helmets and pushing against their bodies. Cale checked his tracker. "Visibility is dropping. If it gets worse, we'll lose our sense of direction." Leora didn't slow down. "Humans don't give up that easily. Keep moving. Keep thinking." Her voice, calm but strong, helped Kale push through the fear rising in his chest. This storm was nothing like the smaller ones he had faced before. It was powerful, almost unnatural. Like the moon itself was warning them. They pressed forward, but soon the outposts vanished behind waves of white. The landscape dissolved into a blur of wind and snow. The world shrank to the few steps in front of them. Kale's heart pounded. "Leora," he called through the cums. "I can't see anything." "I'm right beside you," she answered. "Just follow my steps." But the storm grew louder, swallowing her voice. For a moment, Kale felt a familiar panic, the same fear he had felt months ago when he thought he would be alone here forever. The fear of silence, of isolation, of being lost with no one to hear him. Then, through the blinding snow, a gloved hand grabbed his arm. Leora. Her grip was steady, firm. She pulled him close so their helmets almost touched. "You're not alone," she said loudly. "We'll get through this. Humans always do." Her words steadied him like a warm light in the freezing wind. He nodded and tightened his grip on her suit. Together they pushed forward, step by step. After what felt like hours, Kale's tracker beeped again, weak but clear. "The outpost is close," he shouted. Liora shielded her visor with her arm. "Keep moving. Don't stop." The storm fought them, but they refused to give in. And at last, through the swirling snow, faint blinking light emerged. The emergency beacon Kale had installed months ago. Relief rushed through him. "There, we made it." Leora didn't slow until they reached the airlock. Inside, the door slid shut behind them, blocking out the storm. The sudden quiet pressed against Kale's ears. He took several deep breaths, his body shaking from exhaustion and cold. Leora removed her helmet, her hair damp with melted snow. "We did it," she said, her breath warm in the chilly air. Kale removed his own helmet and laughed in disbelief. That storm was trying to eat us alive. "Storms don't think," Leora said gently. "But humans do, and that's what saved us." Kale felt a swell of pride. She was right. Even in the middle of an alien moon, in a deadly storm, they had made it back because they refused to give up. But their relief didn't last long. Alarms suddenly blared through the outpost. The lights flickered, then dimmed. Kale sprinted to the control panel. "Life support systems are unstable." "How?" Leora asked. "Everything was working when we left." Kale quickly scanned the readings. The storm caused a power surge. "It's overloading the main reactor." Leora leaned beside him, studying the data. "If the reactor fails, the whole outpost could shut down. And freeze us within minutes," Kale finished. The two exchanged a look. "No fear, just determination. Let's fix it," Leora said. They rushed to the reactor chamber. The lights flickered in rapid bursts, casting long shadows across the metal walls. The reactor core hummed irregularly, glowing with unstable pulses. Kale grabbed his tools. "I need to stabilize the power feed. Leora, monitor the temperature levels. If it rises too fast, warn me." She nodded and immediately went to work. Kale crawled under the reactor panels, the heat making his gloves slippery. Sparks flew as he disconnected damaged cables. His hands shook with the effort, but he kept going. Leora called out temperature warnings every few seconds. The pressure built. The heat increased. The alarms grew louder. Kale gritted his teeth. Come on. I know humans can do better than this." Finally, with one last twist of his tool, the reactor's hum steadied. The lights flickered, then returned to a stable glow. Leora checked the readings. Power levels stabilizing. "We did it." Kale leaned back, letting out a long breath of relief. That was too close. Leora offered him a hand, pulling him to his feet. "You did well. You think fast under pressure?" Kale shrugged shyly. "I learned to think fast when there was no one else here." "But you're not alone anymore," Leora said, her voice soft but sure. Kale met her eyes and felt warmth spread through his chest. Humanity wasn't just about surviving. It was about connecting, about helping each other rise above danger. They returned to the control room, exhausted but safe. Outside, the storm continued to rage, pounding the walls of the outpost. Inside, Kale and Leora worked together to reroute backup power, secure the external panels, and reinforce the heating systems. Hours passed in steady teamwork. Their movements synchronized naturally, as if they had been working together for years instead of days. Kale realized something important: humanity's strength wasn't just technology or intelligence. It was cooperation. It was the simple belief that they could accomplish more together than alone. When everything was secured, Kale slumped into a chair, breathing hard. Leora pulled off her gloves and sat beside him. "Do you ever think," Kale said quietly, "that humans are stronger when we're together?" Leora nodded. "Always. That's why we explore. That's why we survive. Even when we're far from home, we build new connections." Kale looked at her thoughtfully. "The ruins. Do you think they tested us?" The storm, the energy surges. It felt like the moon was reacting to what we did. Leora considered the idea. Maybe they wanted to see how humans respond to danger. "And we showed them," Kale said, feeling a surge of pride. "We don't run. We adapt. We fix things. We survive." "Yes," Leora agreed. "And we take care of each other." Her words echoed softly in the small room. Kale glanced at the window. The storm clouds glowed faintly with flashes of distant lightning. "Tomorrow," he said, "we go back to the ruins." Leora smiled. "Yes, and we'll be ready." As the storm continued to rage around them, the outpost stood firm, powered by human effort, human determination, and human resilience. Kale felt it clearly now. Humanity wasn't meant to hide from the unknown. Humans were meant to face it, learn from it, and rise above it. And for the first time since he arrived on this moon, Kale didn't just believe they could survive, he believed they could shine. The storm had finally passed. Outside the outpost, the frozen plains glimmered under the weak sunlight, ice crystals sparkling like tiny stars. The air was still, but Kale and Leora knew that the ruins they had discovered still held secrets. The pulse of the alien signal had not stopped. It called to them, urging them to return and uncover the truth. Kale double-checked his equipment, making sure the scanners were fully operational. Leora adjusted her pack, securing the cables and devices that monitored energy fluctuations. Both of them moved with a quiet determination, their experience from the storm having strengthened their confidence. "This time," Kale said, "we'll be prepared for anything." Leora smiled faintly. "Yes, and this time we go deeper." The trek across the icy plains was smoother than before, though the cold still bit at exposed edges of their suits. Kale glanced at the horizon, where the ruins jutted from the snow like ancient teeth. The thought of what lay ahead filled him with anticipation. Humanity had faced countless challenges, but discovering knowledge older than humanity itself, that was a challenge unlike any other. As they entered the central chamber again, the crystal's glow welcomed them. This time it pulsed steadily, not aggressively, as if acknowledging their return. The patterns on the walls shifted subtly, rearranging themselves in response to their presence. Kale felt a strange sense of calm. "Do you feel it?" he asked Leora, his voice barely above a whisper. "Yes," she replied. "It's communicating more clearly now." They approached the crystal carefully. Kale activated his scanner, recording the data in real time. The symbols on the walls seemed to react, glowing brighter with each pulse of the device. Suddenly, a holographic projection shot up from the crystal. Both Kale and Leora stepped back, shielding their eyes. Shapes and lines formed into an intricate map, not of the surrounding terrain, but of multiple locations, other ruins scattered across nearby moons, planets, and even deep space. "It's a network," Leora whispered. "These ruins are connected." Kale's mind raced. It's not just a single site. It's a library, a collection of knowledge preserved by an ancient civilization. They wanted it to be found by someone capable. The crystal pulsed faster, sending waves of energy that seemed to resonate with the scanners. The signal contained instructions, diagrams, even schematics. Kale realized that the alien builders had encoded technology humans could understand, if they approached it carefully. "This is incredible," Kale said, awestruck. the knowledge here. It could advance humanity by centuries, Leora nodded. But it's not just technology. Look at these sequences. They show patterns of cooperation, problem-solving, even ethics. They're teaching us what it means to use knowledge wisely. Kale stepped closer to the projection. His eyes scanned the data streams, trying to absorb as much as possible. He felt a surge of pride. Humanity had endured isolation, storms, and unknown dangers, and now they were being entrusted with something extraordinary. "We have to take this back to the outpost," he said. "If this information is distributed, it could change everything." Leora's expression softened. "Yes, but we also need to understand it ourselves first. We can't just take it blindly. We need to prove we are worthy of it." Kale smiled, a mixture of excitement and determination shining in his eyes. "Humans can handle this. We've survived everything this moon has thrown at us. Together, we can unlock the rest." As they began studying the projection in detail, the holographic images shifted again. This time, they revealed a sequence of puzzles, tasks, and patterns that required logic, cooperation, and ingenuity to decode. Kale and Leora worked side by side, their movements synchronized. Every time Kale solved a sequence, Leora corrected or refined his calculations. Every time Leora deciphered a pattern, Kale noticed a detail she had missed. Hours passed. The chamber glowed around them, but they did not notice. They were consumed by the challenge, testing their minds against the knowledge left behind by a civilization far older than humanity. At one point, Kale paused and looked at Leora. "You know," he said, "this is more than just solving puzzles. It's a test of humans themselves." Leora looked at him, her eyes thoughtful. "Yes. They want to see if we can use knowledge wisely, if we can adapt, if we can survive together. And we are." Kale felt a swell of pride. Humanity had always been strong in the face of danger. But this facing something completely unknown, something older and wiser than themselves, showed a new kind of strength. Curiosity, courage, and cooperation. Finally, the holographic projection shifted one last time. A pathway appeared, showing a series of hidden chambers beneath the ruins. The energy readings confirmed that these chambers held advanced technology machines capable of generating energy, tools that could manipulate materials at microscopic levels, and devices that stored knowledge in ways Kale could barely imagine. "This is it," Kale whispered. "This is the core of their civilization's gift," Leora nodded, "and it's ours to protect, understand, and use wisely." They descended into the hidden chambers carefully. Each step was measured, cautious yet confident. The walls glowed faintly, guiding them. When they reached the first chamber, Kale's scanner picked up a massive energy source. It seemed almost alive, pulsing in harmony with the crystals above. "This energy. It's sustainable," Leora said, her eyes wide. "We could use this to power human colonies for decades." Kale's mind whirred with possibilities. Clean energy, advanced tools, knowledge of alien science, all waiting for humans to explore. The thought filled him with pride. Humanity had endured, had survived, and now was capable of understanding this ancient gift. They carefully collected samples, data, and schematics. Every discovery reinforced the idea that humans were meant to explore, adapt, and grow. Even in the most remote and dangerous corners of space, as they prepared to leave the chambers, Kale paused and looked around. "We've learned so much," he said softly. "But the real lesson is about humans. Our courage, our curiosity, our willingness to face the unknown. That's what they were looking for." Leora smiled. "Exactly. And we proved it." They made their way back to the outpost, carrying the knowledge and samples with them. The journey across the frozen plains was easier now. The storm had passed, and the sky was clear, reflecting the sunlight off the ice like a million tiny stars. When they reached the outpost, Kale contacted the Central Human Command. "We found something incredible," he said. "A network of ruins with technology and knowledge older than humanity itself. We need to study it carefully," Leora added, "and we must ensure it is used wisely. Humanity has the potential to thrive if we learn from it." As the transmission ended, Kale turned to Leora. "You stayed, didn't you?" he asked, a small smile on his face. I did, Leora replied, because no one should face the unknown alone. And because humans are worth staying for. Kale laughed quietly. Yeah, humans are capable of incredible things. We just have to believe in ourselves. Outside, the sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the icy plains. The ruins stood silent, waiting for the next explorers. But Kale and Leora knew that humanity was ready. They had survived isolation, storms, and unknown dangers. They had faced intelligence far older and wiser than themselves, and they had proved that humans were not only resilient, they were capable of discovery, understanding, and greatness. Kale looked at Leora one last time before entering the outpost. The galaxy is waiting, he said, and humans are ready, Leora replied. Inside, the outpost hummed with life. Outside, the frozen plains glistened under the fading light. And above it all, the ruins pulsed faintly, acknowledging humanity's courage and resilience. For the first time on this lonely moon, Kale felt a sense of completion. Humanity had survived. Humanity had shown. And together, they would continue to reach for the stars, proving that no challenge, no storm, no isolation, no unknown was greater than the strength, courage, and ingenuity of the human spirit. They were explorers, survivors, and pioneers. They were humanity, and humanity, as always, would prevail.